The Origin of the Soul is Extraterrestrial. What You Wanted to Know About After Death by the S.E.G. Shimon Eliezer G. I dedicate this book in memory of my dear family and friends. Beautiful souls, may they rest in peace. They are missed. In the beginning of times, in the book of Genesis, these are the chronicles of heaven and earth. After having transgressed God's orders not to eat the fruit of the tree of life, the angel said, "The ground will therefore be cursed because of you. You will derive food from it with anguish all the days of your life. It will bring forth thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat grass of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat bread. Finally, you will return to the ground, for it was from the ground that you were taken. You are dust, and to dust you shall return." The man named his wife Eve, because she was mother of all life. God made leather garments for Adam and his wife, and he clothed them. Now Adam and Eve were banned from paradise. Thus they found themselves naked. What does this mean? Well, this means that the soul is naked in a material world of ours. Then God gave them leather garments, in other words, bodies of flesh and bones. The soul without a body cannot subsist in our material world. The soul comes from a different reality that is extraterrestrial, and the body is made of the four elements of earth. When a soul wants to incorporate our material world, then we come back to our reality of reincarnation and to the closest connection that was in her past mission on our material reality. Altogether meaning that we are to return and accomplish a task that we did not accomplish in our earthly existence. We will probably have to return various times and do the right assignments given to us from heaven, thus enabling us to be freed and return to Eden or Creator on the endless light. Resuming all this, let us understand that, in other words, we are in this world sentenced for a certain period to correct and cleanse our soul until the task has been accomplished. In a human example, understanding. A man is sentenced to 50 years in prison once he finished his time. He is freed. The latter is afraid to leave, because he does not know what awaits for him outside. Likened to our life and departure of our body and environment, to unknown and forgotten spiritual world, the world of truth, the world that a soul has no restrictions of the body. The soul is free and joins the universal creation in its entirety. The soul is everywhere. The time, distance, needs, or pain, or any human endurance has no relevance in that dimension. When a baby is born, he generally cries a lot, because he has to breath and enter this world of ours, and he was very comfortable in his mother's womb. Now he will cry to be fed, to be changed to clean cloths, when he is uncomfortable. For the baby, he is not happy with this situation he uses to have everything inside his mother womb. That's an antechamber between heaven and earth. This being the beginning of the baby's trek in the material world, with all kind of obstacles, joy, sorrow, hard times, and the baby will at one point make decisions on himself that could change his path on a good or a bad trip, until the moment to be freed on the latter days, the end of his trek in this world. Then he goes back from where he came from in the spiritual world, according to his results of his actions, good or bad. His next assignment, he will have to return in our material world. It is likened to an actor getting a role in a movie. If he convinces of his talents, then he will get a better role, and so on. And on the contrary, he will not get a good role on the next movie. So, the same it is, according to our behavior and deeds. In the next reincarnation, we will get what he builds or destroy on his next trek. So, when we see people that are successful in the current life and had a good name, then he will have a good role for her rebirth, the same as on the other realm. If he was bad, then he will come back in the new reincarnation with hardship, illnesses, and sorrow, of course in the measure of his deeds. It is also likened to a person that received $1,000 and invests it and makes a good profit. Then this person will always get credit for proving his good deeds, intentions, and management. On the other end, he gets $1,000 and go and spends in drugs and other misdeeds. After a while, he has no money, and of course the bank will not help this individual, and he will have a miserable life if he continues in the same behavior. In other words, what you build in the material world will profit you for the next reincarnation. As King Solomon said, it's better a good name than a good oil. This means that if you have a good reputation, it's better than money. It is understood that your reputation will precede you, but money oil doesn't last forever. You might have it, and you have not a good reputation. When you lose it, then no one will come to your help. In this world, you have to build up your reputation. Even when the person passes away from this world, people will say, "Oh, he was a good and just person. May God keep him in a good place in heaven with the saints." These words will elevate his soul, and he will be judged accordingly in the world to come. For those that do not believe in reincarnation, I have a word to say. What is the soul? The soul is a spark of the Creator, pure energy. When the body is broken from illnesses, accidents, crime, the soul can be freed because the soul cannot be contained. It has no limitations. Every soul has a degree of purity. Let us assume, for argument's sake, that a soul has a 1,200-degree purity. Reincarnation can be in 4 different levels or types. 1. The human needs a 1,000 degree of purity to enable him to reincarnate as human. 2. The animal is below the energy of a human level. 3. The plants, trees, and flowers will be below the animal level. 4. The minerals are the lowest of all 4. Below that is the underworld, or the world of darkness, inequity, or hell in the human terminology. So, if a person according to his purity will come back in a reincarnation that depends on his purity level, it's important to invest on yourself, so you will not reincarnate on an animal, plants, or minerals. Moses requested from the Creator to be able to see him. He answered, "No one alive can see me." Of course, not everyone can get to that level. All the levels are good in its measures, but the efforts will lead him up or down. The higher the soul climbs, better share it will get, and the lesser times it will have to come back to the material world. The processes of a soul reincarnation are in many different ways. It could take a long time, or shorter, or immediate. Once the soul is freed from the body, the soul is dedicated to a certain entity, or in a future one. Every time, the soul will wait for a birth that will occur in due time. It's rare that a soul will come to disrupt that order and reincarnate an already born child or a young human that will have deficiencies in his or her body defenses. It could also be in an autistic young person that could not prevent a body abduction. The erred soul that did not follow its path and found itself wandering around our material dimension, so it finds a possible port body to anchor. Then that new entity will possibly have a double personality, and if the soul that occupied that body has a stronger willpower, that will determine that young person's character and path for his future. This is just an example, but there are so many variants that no one could really project itself to a certain reality. In various situations, the parents of that confused child could have a good hypnotist intervene and understand that the soul invader is influencing and creates difficulties, and find ways to make him, her, leave that entity. Mostly if it is a bad influence. An example. Each person could be invested by many entities that come and grab a certain person and try to correct their part of their soul that needs corrections. But mainly that entity has a master soul that is in control. So many are the persons that have negative pulses and entices that entity to do bad things or bad decisions that are not in his usual behavior, but instead is tempted to do something in a split of a second. Then once done, she does it. Then the main soul will feel the guilt of her sudden bad decision and deed. So, these souls' reincarnation additives try all the time to push their ways to influence the main entity. So, the main soul will get to reincarnate 4 times through his treks in the material world. All kind of temptations that will draw his, her, life path. To cause that soul not to be influenced to the negative soul invaders, the parent's education and environment could prevent that entity against bad influences, even if it is difficult to counter the bad pulse and influences. Strict rules like religion's commandments could override the negative influences, even if they are hard to avoid them. The strong belief of a higher authority could circumvent all the negative influences. The life's trek is an endless path full of ambush. So some religions create like a map so you won't fall in the moving sands and cause harm to the continuation of your trip toward a positive outcome, toward the light and not to the darkness. To arrive to the main level of awareness, start your journey soon. The trek is long and the time is short. It's worth it. The gain could be really great. For more detailed Kabbalistic information, please refer to the last page. King Solomon said, "Better is the day of dying than the day of birth." And he also said, "Life is likened to a shadow of a passing bird. The writer will express the moribund person as speaking as himself. My name is Harold and I am 82 years old. I have been sick with a cancer for the past 18 months. It looks that there is no cure and my days are counted for. I am suffering terribly. My wife is staying with me most of the time. She sleeps in a couch next to my bed, and it is making my pain and sorrow very hard, seeing her suffering for me, with me. I am connected to a morphine transfusion as needed, but slowly nothing appeases my pain. But the cancer is deteriorating my health by the hour. My wife's face could express the severity of my illness. She tries to hide it from me by crying when she turned the other way and wiped her tearing eyes. She is still as beautiful that the first day we met 50 years ago. I feel so bad for her suffering more than my own. Many times, I prayed the Almighty to end my suffering and also of my family's. Suddenly, I felt alleviated and elevated as I was watching myself from above laying in my bed, and also, I see my wife rushing toward me screaming. The cardiac alarm was breaking the silence. Various nurses and doctors rushed toward my bed, pulled my blouse and prepared the defibrillator and was charging, shouting, 200 joules hands off, and placed the plaques on my chest. Boom! I felt a very strong electrocution that brought me back to myself on my bed. I am hardly breathing and coughing. My wife came back to the room and cried and laughed at the same time. 2 doctors were checking me. My wife was eager to touch me and kiss me. "Oh, you scared me, my love. You scared the hell out of me." She wiped her tears. I love her eyes so much. Her beautiful face not showing her 68 springs. One of the doctors called my wife Sarah outside my room. The doctor, "Madame, your husband's heart is very weak, regardless of the cancer that is spread all over his lungs and digestive system. It's time to call your children and grandchildren to say goodbye. He will not pass this night. So, sorry, but that's the best for him. He is suffering too much," and he left. Sarah couldn't contain her desperation and tears. She was not ready to let him go. What will she do without him? How will she continue? I have to call the children now. She wiped her tears and made a few phone calls. With a trembling voice, she told her sons and daughters, "Please hurry and come to the hospital. Your father isn't doing well. Please hurry." The doctor put me back, the respirator, since it was very hard for me to breathe. My lungs were almost totally destroyed by the cancer. My wife re-entered the room. She had a poor smile, but she couldn't hide her anguish. Her face was flooded of tears. She came and sat next to me, laid her face on my chest and burst in a frantic cry. "I can't live without you. Please, don't leave me." I couldn't talk or try to calm her down. The oxygen mask covered my mouth and I tried to raise my hand and caress her face, that face that I adored. I didn't worry about me any longer. It was just for her and my children. She lifted her face that was all flooded with tears and looked at me with tenderness and said, "I love you and you will be always here," touching her heart and head. I probably fell asleep. When I opened my eyes, I was surrounded by all my beloved ones, my sons, daughters, and grandchildren. I tried to smile, but probably a grin was painted on my face. Everyone tried to touch, caress me. The little ones were kissing my hands. Everyone acted differently, not knowing how to show their emotions. I felt a strange feeling all over my body, like a cold wave going through me, almost relieving my pain. I suddenly was again lifted from my body and watching the whole scene of my family down below. There's suddenly a commotion, all shouting, calling the doctors that came almost instantly. The electro showed a straight line together with a beep, showing that it was the end. The doctor said, "So sorry, that's it. My condolences to all of you. Your loved one has stopped his suffering. May he rest in peace." My older son came and closed my eyes, reciting the Shema. The emotions ran high. My wife fainted and my daughters-in-law took care of her. She was very pale. The children cried, each one in a corner. Some left the room to cry. "Hey, I am here. I am not gone yet. Why all of you are crying?" I screamed. "What is going on?" I said. It seemed that no one heard me. I tried to hold my wife's hand, but for some strange reason I couldn't. My hand went through hers. No one seemed to notice me. Am I really dead? No, that's not possible. Not yet. I had a lot of things that I wanted to tell all of them. So, that's it? This is death? I kept trying to attract my family's attention to no avail. Maybe I was dreaming, and all this was the effects of the morphine. But all this seemed unreal. I am still here, I thought to myself. Why is no one can hear me or see me? By the same token, I did not feel any pain. Maybe it's the moment that every human being is afraid of. So, am I dead? Really dead? What's next for me? Who is going to direct me what to do next? That's what the Kabbalah teachings are for. In the fifth dimension. Now, I am a spectator of my own death. I see my dear ones suffering, crying of my demise. A mixed feelings ran over me. Sorrow, sadness, but no pain. It was an unknown feeling to me. Normally I should be sad for my loved ones, but it was a mild, strange feeling. Unlike when I was alive, that normally I would be crying, hurt, but none of that. I passed in front of a mirror that was hung on a wall. I looked, but there was no reflection of me, just a ghost. I re-entered the room where my core was laying on a stainless table, covered with a white sheet. I wanted to lift the sheet and see my face, but my hands could not move a material item. I went back to see my wife and family. They were still crying and hugging each other, the children kissing her hands, trying to calm her down, to no avail. I wanted to do something to ease her pain and sorrow, but what? I approached and tried to hug her, but my hands went through her, as she were not a material person, but it was me that went through her. What a feeling. What can I do? I went around the hallways and saw a few floating energies. One was a little girl, probably 10 or 12 years of age. I asked her, "Can you see me?" She nodded. I asked her, "What is your name?" She said, "Annie, what happened to you?" She said, "I don't know. I don't understand where I am and what is going on. No one seems to hear me or see me. Why? I am scared. What should I do? Please help me." Her light was stronger than mine. How can I explain to her that I am now a spirit and not alive? I faced her, if I can call it this way. "Well, as you see that, you can see me, and me you. As for me, I was very ill, and I am now not alive." She said, "It means that I am dead?" She had a sad expression like she cried invisible tears. "What happened to you?" I said. "Did you have an accident?" She answered, "Well, my brother was driving and did not have a driving license. A car ran in our car on my side where I sat, and the next thing I know, I found myself in this hospital. My parents came and they cried a lot when the doctor spoke to them and covered my face with a sheet. I tried to pull it away, but I couldn't. I called Mom and she couldn't hear me. I was watching the bed where I was, and I guessed that I was under the sheet. My parents were kneeling next to the bed where I was, crying so much. I tried to calm them, but they couldn't hear me. I was sad and furious, not understanding this situation. Why am I dead? I am only 10 years old. I did not know how to act. I said, "Little girl, I am so sad for you. But again, we all have a task and a reason for the happening. I myself, confused and quite old. Not like you, and talking to you kept my concerns away. I wish I knew more and know what to tell you. Let us go and see our loved ones before they leave." I found myself instantly next to my wife and family. I wanted with all my heart try to alleviate their pain. What could I do? They can't hear and feel me. The emotions ran high. And finally, my older sons convinced my wife to leave. She tried to resist, not wanting to leave me alone in the morgue. I finally saw them leave. I wanted to follow them, but I remembered the little girl that was alone and very confused. I entered the room where she laid in the bed. She was looking at her parents, trying to attract their attention. I said, "How are you coping with the situation?" She barely looked at me. "I don't know. I am very scared. I have never done anything without my parents' approval. You know, follow your parents when they leave, and go wherever they go. For now, and let's see where does this lead us. We will probably meet again." My sons had to hold their mother that could barely walk. Moments later, I was home before they arrived. I just sought a bought home and I was there instantly. There was no distance or time for me, just thinking of somewhere, and I found myself there instantly. My grandchildren kept kissing their grandmother. My daughter brought her some water, which she tried and refused it. I was there not knowing how to ease her pain. I wish they could know that I was there, not suffering, not under sedation, but in between two worlds. They inserted cotton swabs in my nostrils. That was the way they did to every core. I felt a presence next to me. It was the little girl, she said. You are back? I answered, yes, and wanted to see how you were. Did you follow your parents? They have not left, and my brother is in this same hospital due to the accident, and he is in a difficult condition. My parents are next to his bed, waiting for the doctors to pronounce themselves about his condition. Listen, little girl, do not be worried. Things could only get better. I am going to follow my path and see where it leads me. Do the same. Stay around your family. Maybe you should try and think hard of what you would like to tell them. My work. I will hope that we will cross each other again. The little girl went away, probably sad and worried of her future uncertainty. I, again, found myself home, where my loved ones mourning my departure. My wife had her eyes swollen and red from crying. The rest of my loved ones, some crying and some talking about everything and anything, remembering situations involving me or conversations. My grandchildren, serious faces not knowing how to cop this situation. Did they have the right to talk or not? Cry? Laugh timidly? In general, the moment was solemn. They slowly fell asleep, sitting on the floor, on the sofa. The day was long and full of emotions. I felt so many mixed feelings and emotions, but in strange ways, not in earthly measures. It was past midnight. Everyone in the apartment, tired, fell asleep. My burial was planned for the morning. My sons and daughter took care of the procedures and paperwork. For everyone, all this was new and full of questions, without straight answers. I felt pulled away and found myself in the morgue, where I saw my demise, pale and inert. I looked as if it were a foreign body, not my own. I was in the hallway. I noticed various departed entities, floating, coming out of certain rooms, probably where their bodies laid in their beds. Again, I found myself projected on a cemetery. Below myself was a big space that I guessed will be my grave. It was so strange and worrisome, not knowing. If I will be inside this hole and I will feel that imprisonment in the end of this cavity, would I feel that hardship? Looking around me, various energies were floating around. I understood it to be aired souls of people that have passed away. I was to be buried just close to my parents' tombs. I approached 3 souls that were nearby to see if they could explain the situation. I asked these entities, what are we doing or expecting to do here? Another soul said it usually comes after the 7th day of our death. We have seen many disappear around the 7th day, or maybe more, up to a maximum of 30 days. I again asked, but how? How do we know what to do? The 3rd soul answered. He was in his 7th day. Well, I have seen 3 light beings, probably angels. What should I do next? The moment later, I was back in my home, where the whole family was getting ready for the departure to the cemetery. The room was heavy with the scent of lilies and the suffocating weight of silence. 3 rabbis stood in a tight semicircle before my family, their presence absolute. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their faces were carved from the same stone as the monuments in the yard, etched with the cold, unyielding solemnity of their calling. I watched from the threshold, a ghost in my own living room, observing the scene with a clarity that felt sharper than any I had known in life. The rabbis moved in unison. From their pockets, they produced silver scissors. The blades caught the dim, filtered light of the room, throwing thin, jagged reflections against the walls. They held the tools with steady, calloused fingers, the tension in their wrists suggesting a task that was both sacred and inevitable. The first rabbi stepped forward, his movements precise and rhythmic. He gripped the fabric near the shoulder, the silver blades biting into the weave with a sharp, metallic snap. The sound was distinct, a dry, jagged tearing that cut through the silence like a blade through parchment. My wife flinched, her shoulders rising as the fabric parted. The rabbi moved to the next, then the next, his pace unwavering. Each snip echoed, a rhythmic punctuation of loss that seemed to vibrate in the floorboards beneath my feet. I watched the torn edges hang loose, frayed threads dangling. In the dim light, a physical manifestation of the heartbreak that had just begun to tear through our home. The family stood motionless, their heads bowed low, accepting the ritualized destruction of their peace. The sound of the tearing cloth filled the space, drowning out the shallow, ragged breathing of my children. There was no resistance, only the steady, relentless progression of the blades. The silence that followed the final snip was heavier than the sound of the blades. No one spoke, a long, dark chain of steel and glass. I drifted above the asphalt, watching the procession organize itself into a slow-moving snake. It stretched down the street, winding around the corner and disappearing into the gray horizon of the city. I was merely a passenger in the air, watching the distance grow between the life I had known and the destination that now awaited us all. The procession slowed to a crawl as we reached the iron gates of the cemetery. I drifted forward, drawn by an invisible current, until I hovered directly beside the hearse. It was a sleek, black machine, polished to a mirror finish that caught the overcast sky. Inside, resting on a bed of velvet, lay the vessel I had inhabited for 82 years. I stared at the form within, noting the stillness of the hands and the unnatural set of the jaw. I reached out, my intent to touch the cold glass of the rear window, but my hand passed through the surface without a ripple. There was no resistance, no warmth, and no recognition from the shell that once defined my existence. The 82 years of memory compressed into a single static image, and I realized with absolute clarity that the occupant of that casket was no longer me. I looked down at my hands, expecting to see the familiar lines of age, but they were translucent, flickering like light caught in a prism. I tried to press my feet into the soil, to feel the grit and the dampness of the cemetery ground, but my boots passed through the earth as if it were nothing more than mist. The vibration intensified, a low-frequency hum that resonated with the trees and the tombstones. Yet I remained untouched by the world around me. I was weightless, formless, and entirely free. And the distant, rhythmic drip of condensation from the trees. I drifted toward the center of the gathering. The pallbearers stepped forward, their movements synchronized and deliberate. They reached into the back of the hearse. It was a heavy, mahogany box, and as it cleared the threshold of the vehicle, a thick, woven prayer shawl was draped over its lid. The fabric caught the dim gray light, its fringes swaying slightly in the damp breeze. I watched the men navigate the uneven terrain, their boots sinking into the soft, rain-soaked earth of the burial site. They moved with a slow, measured cadence, carrying the vessel toward the dark, rectangular void. Every step they took seemed to echo with the weight of finality. I remained suspended just above the grass, observing the stark contrast. The pallbearers reached the edge of the pit and lowered the casket. The ropes groaned under the tension, a sharp, metallic sound that cut through the stillness of the cemetery. I watched the scene from a few feet away, suspended in the air. My wife stood at the very brink of the opening, her gaze fixed on the dark, damp earth below. Her knees buckled, not slowly, but with a sudden, violent loss of strength. She pitched forward, her body hitting the wet, churned-up soil with a dull thud. A sound escaped her, a sharp, ragged intake of breath that turned into a low, guttural cry. My sons, who had been standing just behind her, surged forward in unison. She was a broken weight in their arms, her body shaking with the force of her collapse, while the world around us seemed to hold its breath in the face of such profound, earthly grief. The brothers struggled to keep their mother upright, their own frames trembling under the sudden, dead weight of her surrender. Their fingers dug into her arms, trying to anchor her against the pull of the earth. Then, the daughters moved. She knelt in the mud beside her mother, uncapping the vessel with shaking hands. She tilted the bottle, letting a stream of cool water spill onto her palm. With a tender, desperate motion, she pressed her wet hand against her mother's forehead, tracing the lines of her brow. The water ran down the woman's temples, mixing with the salt of her tears. It was a futile gesture, a tiny, fragile attempt to shock her back into the present, to soothe a fire that no physical remedy could ever touch. The mother did not seem to feel the cold. She remained locked in her own private collapse. The daughters retreated, their hands still damp from the ritual, leaving a space around the open pit. The pallbearers stepped forward, their shadows stretching long and thin across the disturbed earth. They gripped the thick, coarse ropes that held the weight of the casket. A command was given, though it reached me only as a low, indistinct murmur. The ropes tightened, biting into the wood, and for a heartbeat, everything held perfectly still. The tension was absolute. Sliding away from the light of the afternoon sky, I watched the heavy prayer shawl draped over the lid ripple as it passed into the shadow of the earth. The ropes groaned, a rhythmic, straining sound that vibrated through the ground beneath my feet. Inch by inch, the vessel that had carried me for 82 years sank into the dark, rectangular void. The casket hit the bottom with a soft, final thud, settling into the damp, waiting dark. The silence in the cemetery deepened, heavy and absolute. As the casket rested in the dark, no one moved. The air felt thin, stripped of its usual warmth. Then, the eldest son stepped forward. He reached for a shovel leaning against the mound of fresh earth. His hands gripped the wooden handle, knuckles white, and he hesitated. He did not want to be the one to begin. He took a breath, plunged the blade into the pile, and lifted a heavy load of dirt. He turned and released it. The sound of the soil hitting the wood was sharp, a sudden percussive crack that shattered the quiet. Thud, thud, thud. Each impact resonated through the pit, a hollow wooden beat that vibrated against the soles of my feet. The shovels were set aside, their metal edges clinking against the stone markers nearby. The mound of earth now sat flush with the surrounding grass, a fresh, raw scar in the cemetery landscape. I stood inches from the head of the grave, watching the family turn away. My wife walked with a heavy, uneven gait, her head bowed, supported by the arms of our sons. I reached out, intending to follow, to offer the comfort I had provided for decades. My hand stopped in midair. I felt no pull toward the earth beneath me, no gravity anchoring me to the remains of the vessel I had inhabited for 82 years. The connection had been severed. I was not a participant in this procession. I was a spectator. The transition was seamless, a flicker of light that dissolved the cemetery and reconstituted the walls of my home. I stood in the center of the living room, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and unlit candles. The front door opened, and they entered in a slow, disjointed procession. My wife led the way, her movements sluggish, as if the air itself had turned to water. They did not move to the chairs or the sofas. Instead, they moved to the center of the room, lowering themselves onto the hardwood floor. They sat in a tight, jagged circle, knees pulled to chests, shoulders touching. The house was now a tomb of silence. I watched the clock on the mantel, its steady tick marking the start of the long, slow descent into the week of mourning. My daughter held a picture from our summer at the lake, her thumb brushing over the image of my younger self. My wife took a portrait from the bottom of the stack, her fingers trembling as she traced the curve of my jawline in the print. The air in the room felt heavy, vibrating with a collective weight of their grief. I watched my wife, her head bowed as she clutched a photograph of our wedding day. Her shoulders shook, a rhythmic, jagged motion. To bridge the widening gap between our worlds, I pressed my hand forward. There was no resistance, no warmth, no solid contact. My fingers slipped through her frame as if she were made of thin, gray smoke. I felt nothing but a slight chill. The room remained, stubborn and heavy. The table, the floorboards, the walls, they all possessed a density that mocked my own transparency. I tried to speak, to call out their names, but my voice was only a vibration in the air, a soundless pressure that failed to stir the curtains. The world of solid stone and iron was closing its doors to me. I was no longer a participant in the architecture of their lives. I was an echo, a fading memory of a man who had once occupied space. I was a whisper in a house of stone, waiting for the wind to carry me away. The ache in my knees, the stiffness in my spine, the constant low-level fire in my joints, all of it was gone. I waited for the hunger to gnaw at my stomach, a sensation that had been my constant companion during those long, final weeks of decline. It did not come. I was hollow, yet I was not empty. The thirst that had parched my throat, the labored rhythm of my own breath, these anchors had simply ceased to exist. There was a terrifying silence inside me where my suffering used to be. It was a vacuum, a sudden, violent absence of the physical constraints. I felt myself rising, a balloon cut from its tether, drifting upward as the heavy, aching shell of my past life dissolved into nothingness. I was light. I was untethered. I was finally free from the slow, grinding decay of the flesh. I was already gone. I recalled the dusty pages of the Kabbalists I had pored over decades ago, their words surfacing like light through deep water. They spoke of the soul as a singular, brilliant spark, and the body as nothing more than a temporary garment, a heavy shroud woven from the stuff of the earth. I looked back at the room, at the mourning family, and finally understood the nature of the transition. The material world was a cage of solid stone, and those who clung to it were tethered to their decaying shells, trapped by the gravity of their own perceptions. I had spent 82 years building a life of brick and bone, only to realize it was a costume I had outgrown. The call was absolute. I was no longer a resident of this world, and for the first time, I felt the path forward open wide. The earth beneath me began to lose its definition. The gray stones of the cemetery, once so heavy and permanent, started to shimmer like heat haze on a summer road. I watched as the sharp edges of the monument softened, blurring into a smear of monochromatic light. The ground did not crack. It simply ceased to be solid. It became a suggestion of space, a memory of terrain that was rapidly losing its grip on my perception. I reached out to steady myself against a nearby oak, but my fingers passed through the bark as if it were nothing more than cold morning fog. The trees around me began to fray at the edges, their branches dissolving into thin white filaments that drifted upward. The sky, previously a dull, overcast ceiling, peeled back like paper, revealing a depth that made my internal equilibrium spin. There was no sound of tearing, no crash of falling earth, only a profound, rhythmic fading. The world of my ancestors, the soil of my burial, and the very air I had breathed for 8 decades were being erased. I stood in the center of a vanishing reality, watching the last remnants of the material plane evaporate into a vast, silent nothingness. The transition was complete. The void did not remain empty for long. The darkness receded, replaced by an expansion of space that defied all terrestrial geometry. I found myself standing on a surface that felt like polished glass, yet possessed the warmth of sun-drenched stone. It was a vast, luminous plaza stretching toward a horizon that glowed with an impossible golden intensity. There were no walls, no ceilings, only an endless expanse of shimmering light that seemed to breathe in rhythm with my own awareness. Scattered across this immense floor were countless figures. They moved with a fluidity that suggested they were not walking, but gliding. Above them, beings of blinding, radiant white light drifted like celestial sentinels. These entities did not speak. I looked down at my own hands, seeing them glow with a soft, steady luminescence, mirroring the environment around me. I took a step forward, my feet making no sound against the luminous ground, and felt the immense quiet weight of 1,000 other lives. I drifted through the sea of light, passing figures that shimmered with the residual echoes of their past lives. Some glowed with the soft amber of long-held wisdom, others with the sharp, flickering violet of unresolved intensity. My attention was drawn to 2 figures standing near the edge of the plaza, their light intertwined in a gentle, rhythmic pulse. I moved toward them, not by walking, but by shifting my focus, and the distance between us collapsed. As I drew near, the air between us thickened with a shared recognition. They were like me, untethered, yet still carrying the faint, lingering imprint of their human existence. I reached out, not with hands, but with an open projection of my own essence. They responded instantly. A wave of understanding washed over me, a silent language of shared grief, relief, and the sudden, jarring absence of physical weight. We did not need names. We did not need histories. We stood together, 3 sparks in a vast, luminous sea, bound by the commonality of our departure. We waited, perfectly still. The silence between us deepened, transforming into a dense, information-rich field. I felt the 2 spirits shift their focus, their light intensifying as they projected a singular, coherent thought into my awareness. It was not a voice, but a direct injection of knowledge that bypassed the need for language. They showed me the architecture of this place. They communicated the purpose of our gathering. We were here for the Great Review. The concept manifested in my mind as a vast, intricate ledger of existence. Every action, every intent, every moment of kindness or cruelty from our 82 years was being cataloged by the environment itself. The spirits conveyed that this was the inevitable next step for all who crossed the veil. We were not merely drifting, we were being processed. The realization hit me with the force of a physical impact. The plaza was not a destination, but a filter. We stood in the center of the plaza, our individual identities beginning to align with the collective purpose of the review. The atmosphere of the plaza underwent a sudden, violent shift. The steady, white light that had bathed us for an eternity began to ripple, pulling away from the edges to converge on a singular point in the distance. My companions and I turned in unison. Harold felt younger, our essences vibrating in response to the encroaching presence. 3 distinct pillars of radiance emerged from the convergence, solidifying into forms that defied human geometry. They were the architects of the final assessment. As they approached, the air hummed with a low-frequency pulse that resonated deep within my core. I felt a surge of profound anticipation, a tightening of my own light that mirrored the tension of a bowstring pulled to its limit. These were the ones who would weigh the energy of my past life. They did not speak, yet their arrival brought an absolute clarity to the space. Every action I had taken, every word I had spoken, and every intention I had harbored over 8 decades felt suddenly exposed, drawn toward them like iron filings to a magnet. The angels stopped, their radiance casting long, geometric shadows across the plaza floor. I watched as they extended their hands, not toward us, but toward the very air we occupied. The space between us began to shimmer, revealing a complex web of light threads. I reached out, my fingers brushing against a strand, and felt the immediate, visceral memory of a decision I had made 40 years ago. Harold felt as in one 8 years old. It was not a physical object, but a pulse of intent. The mechanics of this place became clear. The currency of this realm was not gold, nor status, nor the things I had accumulated. It was the weight of my choices, each act of compassion, each moment of integrity, and every hidden motive was being extracted and measured. I saw the threads of my life weave into a singular glowing tapestry. The material world I had left behind the house, the bank accounts had no value here. They were dust. Only the energy of my intentions remained, solid and undeniable. The ledger was not written in ink, but in the permanent resonance of my own soul's history. The light beings began to drift through the gathered circles of souls, their movement fluid and silent. As they passed, the plaza seemed to breathe. I watched a being glide toward a group of spirits who had been trembling in a state of perpetual phantom agitation. As the entity drew near, its radiance expanded, washing over them like a cool, cleansing tide. The trembling ceased. The spirits straightened, their forms brightening as the residual echoes of their earthly lives were smoothed away. I felt the pulse of this peace reach me next. It was not a soft, passive sensation. It was a force of absolute certainty. It moved through my essence, finding the small, jagged edges of fear. I had carried from my final days the dread of the void, the attachment to my physical history, the lingering confusion of the transition. These fragments did not just fade. They were dissolved, rendered inert by the sheer density of the calm radiating from the beings. My internal rhythm slowed to match the stillness of the plaza. I was no longer a man waiting for a verdict. I was a vessel being emptied. The stillness was not an end, but a threshold. As the last remnants of my human perspective dissolved, the horizon of the plaza shifted. The geometry of the space expanded, revealing layers of existence I had never perceived while bound to a physical frame. It was as if a cataract had been lifted from my vision, allowing me to see the grand cosmic architecture that underpins all reality. I saw the interconnectedness of all things not as a philosophical concept, but as a vast, pulsating grid of light and vibration. Every event of my 82 years, every joy and every failure, appeared as a specific coordinate within this immense design. I understood now that my life had never been a solitary, drifting experience. It was a structural element, a necessary support beam in a much larger, infinite construction. The confusion that had defined my final years was replaced by a sharp, crystalline understanding of cause and effect. I was no longer observing the universe from the outside. I was witnessing the blueprint of the infinite, and for the first time, I saw exactly where I fit into the design. The name I had carried for 8 decades began to lose its weight. It was merely a label, a sound tethered to a body that had long since returned to the earth. I felt the final anchors of my human history, the memories of my family, the specific texture of my grief. The limitations of my aging frame peel away from my consciousness. They did not vanish into nothingness. They were absorbed, transformed into the raw data that fueled the architecture I now inhabited. I looked down at the space where my hands had been, but there were no limbs, no skin, no scars. There was only a concentrated point of luminescence, a singular spark of light that pulsed in rhythm with the vast, surrounding grid. The transition was absolute. The man who had lived for 82 years was no longer a distinct entity. He was an integrated component of the infinite. I felt the boundaries of my individual self expand until they touched the edges of the plaza, merging with the collective brilliance of the other souls. I was the design itself, a vital, glowing spark awaiting the next command of the cosmic order. The transformation was complete. The plaza hummed with a resonance that felt like 1,000 voices speaking in perfect unison. I stood within the light, no longer searching for a past that had dissolved, but anchored in the profound stillness of the present. The waiting was not passive. It was a state of total, vibrating alertness. I felt the atmosphere shift as the architects of the cosmic order approached. They did not walk. They manifested as ripples in the fabric of the light, their presence commanding a sudden, absolute silence. I watched as they extended their influence toward the center of our gathering, where the next scripts were being prepared. There was no fear, only a deep, resonant curiosity. I saw the ink of existence not liquid, but pure, concentrated intent begin to flow across the void. My own essence pulsed in response, a beacon of readiness in the vast, luminous expanse. I understood that the script was not something imposed upon me, but a collaborative unfolding of my own accumulated deeds and intentions. The architects paused, their radiance intensifying, and I felt the first lines of my new journey begin to etch themselves into the architecture of the infinite. I held my position, a singular, brilliant point in the grand design. Old life ended, new glowed, ready. I stood at the edge of the cemetery, a silent observer watching the mourners gather. Harold was a new soul, younger. To them, the body resting in that mahogany casket was everything. They wept for the decay, trapped in the crushing belief that this was the end. I watched them like a spectator at a film, my own emotions strangely muted. My physical life had ended, yet here I was, witnessing the transition. My body was old, but my soul was young. I recalled the teachings. The body is but earth, a vessel destined to return to dust. While the soul is the heaven that seeks its true origin, they mourned a shell, unaware that the essence they loved was standing beside them. Suddenly, the scene shifted. The gray cemetery dissolved into a vast, shimmering plaza. Beings of pure, blinding light stood at the center of perfect circles. I felt no hunger, no pain, and none of the worldly weight. I approached 2 wandering souls. We did not speak with voices. We exchanged thoughts through a silent, telepathic hum. They were newcomers, visibly confused by their own passing, waiting for a guide to lead them toward their next great trek. The language of the tongue was replaced by the language of the spirit. A light being approached us, its presence carrying the weight of command. Prepare. 3 angels will soon arrive to review the ledger of your past life. In that moment, the mechanics of the journey became clear. Our earthly deeds were not just memories. They were energy. A life lived with purpose increased the soul's frequency and value. Conversely, a life wasted on material lust degraded that value, risking a descent into the forms of animals or even minerals. I watched the young girl named Annie drifted near. Her light began to pulse with a brilliant, golden intensity. She had surrendered every attachment to her material shell. Small sparks of light gathered around her like a celestial tide. She looked back at us, a smile etched onto her ethereal face, and then vanished into a radiant gateway of pure light. An angel was born. I was so exalted for this little girl. I felt a surge of internal knowledge, a profound certainty. The ledger was being opened, and the truth was being measured. The truth of our existence was being measured in light. I turned my gaze back to the cemetery one last time. Many souls still hovered over their graves, trapped in a loop. But I waited, ready for the three angels. This was a correction. My soul was a script being rewritten for the infinite. Waiting for my new assignment from the Creator, blessed be He.